Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on The Flash Season 8. This is going to be my review for episode 13, otherwise entitled Death Falls. Of course, spoiler alert, just get that out of the way because that last like 5 to 10 minutes was emotionally draining on multiple levels and multiple scenes. They really stabbed you like with an icicle. That's probably the best way to put it. Man, that was so sad. But of course, let me know your various opinions, thoughts, reactions in the comment section down below. What you thought of this episode. I'm very curious to hear what you guys' reactions were and the roller coaster that you're on potentially. Just let me know your thoughts down there. And of course, you're going to enjoy the video. You enjoyed the episode, want to show your support. If you got sad, leave a like on the video, show your support. But last episode, obviously, we had Deathstorm going on a killing spree within Central City, raising his profile, if you want to call it. And he learns he wants to make Caitlin, or we learn that he wants to make Caitlin his bride and is fueling her with the grief from the dead and everything like that. But the team figures that they can alter the Mac tech that was originally used for Chester, but to use on Frost this time to give her, well, just to dampen Deathstorm. That's what we learned last episode. And then also right at the end, Eddie appears to Iris in a bit of a cliffhanger. Now, overall, this episode was really tense because we knew going into it, they made it very well known and very public that someone on Team Flash died this episode. And pretty much from the get-go, it's not going to be any of the people that were really haunted by ghosts. It was either going to be Caitlin or Frost. And I wasn't really sure which direction they were going to go until probably the last 10 minutes. Like when that final 10 minutes kicked up, I was like, okay, I think it's going to be this character. But man, they got you emotionally. Like, it didn't hit me at first, and then that final end credits thing, especially when certain people react and everything like that, that's when it hit me and I started to tear up a bit. Like, the Flash does this weird thing where you have a really fun episode the week before and you're smiling. In the same episode, you're smiling and laughing or something like that. And then they hit you with this and you get upset. You're really emotional. And obviously they do a good job making you connect to at least a certain amount of their characters. So when something like this happens, you feel it. But we pick up in this episode right where last episode ended, where of course Eddie appeared in front of Iris. And we did a video on the weekend wondering what was really going on with this Eddie, whether it was Deathstorm or not. And I was like, well, we'll probably learn straight away out of the gate because Deathstorm's not really going to hide anything. He's not going to pretend because obviously this is some dead person coming back. He'll just jump straight into his theatrics, and that's exactly what happens. Now, when Eddie first comes in, Iris suffers from a bit of time sickness because obviously Eddie showing up is making her a bit uneasy, a bit unstable. But Eddie starts to interact with her and playing around in the kitchen, and Sue wakes up and can see him as well. Very weird, but of course Deathstorm, since he got his body and everything like that after the Black Flame, all these figures that appear are much more stable and almost act like real people like we had with Esperanza last episode. But Team Flash has been working on the Mac, and the results of what will happen with Frost are explained, where Frost will pretty much be able to do what Deathstorm can do. She pretty much gets his powers set, with the main thing being that she can take out Deathstorm's fuel source, depowering him. Now, in the meantime, Caitlin is experiencing some of her worst memories due to all the grief that's building up within her, and just due to overall what Deathstorm has been doing to her over the past, episode, mainly last episode. And this is really where you're from this point on, you're tossing up, is it Caitlin? Is it Frost? Because Frost is going to change to hopefully take on Deathstorm, but then Caitlin's sort of bouncing around, she doesn't look very good, so you weren't really sure which way they're going to go. Now we have another sort of freaky contained stuff going on within Star Labs where, Team Flash is spread out throughout Star Labs. We have Barry in the Time Vault, Allegra in the bar area, I'd probably call it. Chester's in the hallways, Frost is in the vortex, and Deathstorm does appear as Ronnie to Frost. With the others seeing their dead loved ones appear before them, so we had Esperanza to Allegra, Chester's father to obviously Chester, and Nora Allen to Barry, so Star Labs has once again become a bit of a haunted house. But Deathstorm reveals that he actually can't really sense any emotions or grief from within Frost, which is why she isn't being haunted by anyone or anything, and that's really getting to Frost. And in the meantime, Chester and Allegra are lured into Chester's workshop by the ghost of the past and starts to become a hotbox, and they got a bit of a countdown as to whether they'll, make it through. Now, Barry actually does a pretty good job at not falling into Deathstorm's trap by, through him using his mother's image. But when that doesn't work, the deaths of Henry, HR, Oliver and others are targeted and brought back up. So Barry ends up struggling very, very bad within this episode because he's just gone through so much and seen so many people die, which is just added on to at the end of this episode. And we'll bring up, specifically Barry when we get to that moment again as well. Now back to Eddie, Iris, and Sue, where the situation is just pretty much becoming more awkward by the minute. And like the stuff going on in Star Labs, they are pretty much trapped in a hot box as well. Burn hands going on everywhere. Now Eddie's talking about like how pointless his death was in the larger picture, which I disagree with. Like from Eddie's perspective and how Deathstorm wants to present stuff, maybe, but I mean, we know Eddie saved all of Team Flash's lives at that moment. Like, they would have all been killed by Reverse Flash if he didn't kill himself. But Joe does arrive to help, but Eddie targets Joe's grief along with Sue's grief. And just, obviously, he's already targeting Iris, which apparently, all this grief coming out should push Caitlin over the edge to becoming Deathstorm's bride if he pushes it far enough. We're into, like, the final stages of what Deathstorm's trying to do. Now, Chillblaine arrives to help with the final stages of turning the Mac Tech into something that can change Frost via a trip to, Fast Track Labs. He does mention Fast Track Labs. But the transformation with Frost doesn't work, with it apparently being due to what Deathstorm was alluding to before with Frost, that she doesn't really have a consciousness. And she can't feel grief. And the conversation between Frost and Chillblaine, where he plays down her doubts and sort of tries to push her in the right direction, was probably the first time Chillblaine hasn't been a meme. This was the first episode, and like later scenes as well. These were the scenes he actually felt like an actual character and stuff like that. So it's crazy that this was the time it happened, but it's also a very appropriate time for it to happen at the same time. But yeah, it just caught me off guard that they actually sort of made him feel like a proper functioning character rather than just being a walking meme. Now, Deathstorm does succeed in pulling the grief out of everyone he is targeting. We all see it come out at pretty much the exact same time. However, at the same time as that, Frost is able to tap into her emotional side while talking to Caitlin and trying to get through to Caitlin. So her grief is, within her. So she has it in there, just like Deathstorm was doubting. And this is when we have Frost, once that grief comes out, transform into Hellfrost. That was what they called it. Now, it's not anything from the comics, I don't think. I think it's just a nice little name that came up. Death Frost doesn't sound that great, but Hellfrost sounds pretty cool. And it wipes away the ghosts within Star Labs at the time as well, with Frost also revealing that Barry is the Flash to Chillblaine just casually. But I guess that was probably the better time to do it than at the end when all this emotional stuff is going on. Now, Deathstorm does arrive in Star Labs to retrieve Caitlin, but it's actually Frost in disguise, which I thought it would be the case. In my trailer breakdown, I was like, I bet this is going to be a flip on the introduction scene when they thought it was Ronnie and it became Deathstorm, but this time it was, Deathstorm thought it was Caitlin, but then, transformed into Frost, which then transformed into Hellstorm. Obviously, Frost showing her new form to Deathstorm, and we get this cool fight. And it almost felt like Dragon Ball Z or something. They're like throwing like Kamehamehas at each other. Like, it was pretty insane. The VFX in that scene was really, really cool. And Frost is actually able to destroy Deathstorm by just absorbing his power along with it in a pretty tense scene. And the unfortunate thing is that she passes out, and we find out it's due to this overload of the power that was, she's withdrawn from Deathstorm, because Deathstorm was just built to contain more. Now, Caitlin is actually able to bring Frost back to normal for a bit, but it's very temporary. And they get to look at each other for one final moment, and then she flatlines. Frost flatlines. Caitlin tries her best to bring her back by, using the defibrillators and everything like that. And Barry is just stunned. He can't do anything. He's just like, what is he meant to do? He's in the back and he's just stunned that it's happening again. He's had to relive in this episode all the peoples he's lost, a lot of them that he vowed to protect through his leadership and his powers and everything like that, and just people he fought alongside that, did die, and it's happening again right in front of him, and there's nothing he can do. There's nothing he can do. It's not like they're falling off a building and he can run and catch them. There's nothing he can do in this moment, and he was just speechless. He was stunned, and I wonder what the effect of this is going to be on Barry. You'd have to think killing off Frost in this manner, especially with Barry not really being able to do anything, has a good effect on, good in regards to the size. So a good sized effect on Barry going forward. And I'm very curious to see what that effect is. And it was it wasn't at that moment that it hit me. I was just, okay, we know it's Frost that died. But then we get that end credit scene where Team Flash, is just waiting on Barry and Caitlin for an update on Frost. Just going, okay, well, obviously she had a big battle and everything. She needs to recover, whatever it is. And Chillblain's talking to the team, getting emotional over Frost and everything like that and what he means to her. But then Barry has to come in alongside Caitlin. Well, Caitlin comes in after him a bit, and Barry has to give the bad news to the team that Frost is dead. And you finally get Caitlin letting it all out. And Danielle Panabaker was great in this episode, mainly as Frost, because that's what she is for most of the episode. But then obviously in this end bit with Caitlin, where she gets to pretty much just unleash in regards to the emotional side of things. But it was that moment that it hit me. Like when you see like Caitlin let out even like Barry as well. Like it was at that moment where it hit me, and like I had a bit of a tear going down my eye as well, or a tear down my cheek, or tear down, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that was like that moment was the sad part of it all. And as I said, I'm very curious to see what the effect is on various characters, but I guess mainly Caitlin and Barry. You know, what's the effect on them? I don't know how they include Chillblain again going forward. I think I saw in the promo quickly that he's in there, but I think it's just more like how he moves on. So I think next episode might be the final episode that Chillblain's in, but it's giving him like sort of like how he moves on in his life with no Frost there, because Frost was his introductory point. So obviously stuff around her, I guess, is going to be his exit point as well. But man, like as I said, like you knew pretty much either going into the episodes or after like the first 5 minutes that it was going to be Caitlin or Frost, but you're still second guessing up until that point where pretty much I think when like Frost like successfully became Hellfrost or whatever they called her, I think that was like where you start to definitely lean towards Frost. But then obviously when she collapsed, it would have been very, very surprising if she didn't die after that, because they said that, you know, that confirmed it. It makes me wish that it wasn't confirmed so publicly that someone on Team Flash died this episode, because I wouldn't have, it would have made that moment hit much harder. I think most people would agree with that. So I'm very surprised they said that, and they should never say that again going forward with any show in the history of the world, especially when it's a character that you've known for definitely more than one season. So I don't know why they announced that publicly. It would have hit a bit harder, and I think would have played off better in the episode as well, even though, as I said, we were second guessing throughout the entire episode because we knew. So maybe that's why they wanted it to happen that way, because it was pretty much always going to be between Caitlin and Frost. But yeah, so Deathstorm's gone. Some people might be a bit like, say, oh, Deathstorm was defeated too easily, but it made sense how they did it. And I think they had a cool, maybe the action scene could have gone on for a tiny bit longer, but the way that he was dispensed, I think made sense in regards to the show and how they were planning to, you know, go about it all. Like he built all of his power and his form through all this grief. So if it's drained out of him, then he's not going to exist, is he? My only thing I could be a bit upset about is that maybe Frost and Caitlin didn't actually get to properly talk to each other before she died, but they did get that last like moment of eye contact. So maybe that was the way they wanted to go about it. Maybe they thought it'd be a bit more powerful, which I think it probably works either way. But Caitlin was like passed out the entire episode. But then again, we got that emotional moment with Frost talking to Caitlin to bring in that grief. So I guess that was that part of everything, if you know what I mean. So, and then we might get the Caitlin side at Frost funeral next episode, because next episode is called Funeral for a Friend. So that's obviously going to be the funeral for Frost. And I wonder if we get any surprise appearances. I wonder if Cisco's in that. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, overall, this episode was, as I said, like a bit of an emotional roller coaster, because you weren't too sure where things were going. It's definitely not the best episode of the season, but it was obviously leading up to this takedown of Deathstorm, and we get that like that final little like haunted house sort of feeling. But I think the way that they managed everything with Frost and stuff, like I think was very tense and everything like that, and I enjoyed it for what it was. And yeah, it's gonna be weird not having Frost on the episode, because in the episodes anymore, because like she was like the guy, she was the like the partner in crime for Barry when he went out in the field. Like you'd have Flash and Frost, because she was the only other metahuman. I guess Barry goes out on his own all the time now, which people might like, but then he has no backup, like metahuman backup. So I'll have to wait and see how things play out going forward. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions about everything, your reactions to Frost's death and everything like that. Did you tear up? Did you get emotional? What were your thoughts? Let me know all them in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.